What is going on, guys? I am your host, Michael Set It All. This is the Set It Off Network. It is November 6th, day of our Lord 2024. And man, it's the biggest game on LSU's schedule all season. Nobody can debate it. It's been this way for a long time now. And that we're talking about LSU and Alabama. The game everybody wants to talk about this week, right? The real first official playoff elimination game in the regular season. When you have a 12-team playoff, these are the kind of games that sets up for you here in November. And what is the old saying? It is October's for pretenders, November's for contenders. Well, if you want to kick off November on the right foot, you go out there and you get a win over a top 15 team and pretty much cement yourself right back into the playoff conversation. LSU and Alabama have looked inconsistent, to say the least, here so far. Both teams come in this game 6-2. Both teams coming in this with losses to a top 10 team and a loss to a team that kind of sucks. No offense to Vanderbilt, but you know what I mean. Both have a lot of flaws. A lot of talent, a lot of flaws, though. I think both teams have really good coaching staffs. It's almost kind of scary how similar these teams are as far as the way they match up, right? I'm always a big believer in styles make fights, right? And my biggest thing when we talked about the Texas A&M game was the styles make fight narrative, and I said if it's Connor Wigman versus Garrett Nussmeier, I just don't see how A&M's going to be able to score enough to keep up with LSU. And we all know how that all turned out, right? I just didn't think it was a good matchup. Now, this matchup is a nightmare. Absolute nightmare for LSU because this is easily the best version of this offense that you've seen. With Kalen DeBoer calling plays and working in his new system, with a guy like Jalen Milroe and a guy like Ryan Williams and Jam Miller as weapons, this is by far the best offense at what they're going to do. Because you face mobile quarterbacks this year. You face South Carolina, had Lenore Sellers and Robbie Ashford and a really good running game. And you face guys like at Arkansas, like Taylon Green. And then we saw what happened last time in College Station where you face a guy like Marcel Reed. Now, my question here is, what version of LSU's defense do you get? Do you get the LSU version that took a week and a half to prepare for this and kind of got everything back in tune? Do they look more like the Arkansas defense, or do they look more like the South Carolina and the Texas A&M defense? Because if you remember, at the South Carolina game, North Sellers had a huge, big run. But my biggest thing with LSU and the mobile quarterbacks is not necessarily the actual quarterback running the football, right? It's the defense not accounting for the running back and the quarterback running the ball, because we've seen this defense stop the run. We've seen this defense stop the quarterback run. Well, what we've yet to see is them do a combination of the both, because the Arkansas game is the close example we got, right? And is that going to be the outlier? Or is that kind of who you can be at this point in the season? Because that's the kind of vibe I got going in the Texas A&M that gave me so much hope, because I thought LSU had really turned the corner. But then you have what you have in the second half of the Texas A&M game, and it feels like you really reverted back to old narratives, right? And it's all about gaps. It's all about the defensive line winning and the point of attack, and it comes with all of that. Now, Alabama's not going to run the ball like you think. It's not going to look like 2015 Alabama where they're just giving the rock to Jam Miller or, whoever 40 times. It's not going to happen. That man, in a lot of their games against elite teams, has not even topped 15 carries. He only has 74 carries on the year, 450 yards total. So they're not a team that's going to just run a back out there and just hand it off nonstop. Obviously, Jalen Milroe, take that into account what he is running the football. And you have this deadly weapon of a running game, kind of like the Jaden Daniels thing. LSU Probably couldn't run the ball last year, but Jaden Daniels opened up a lot of that for the LSU offense last year and made it extremely difficult to account for running backs when you had to account for the quarterback as well. Same problem LSU's defense is going to have on Saturday night, right? How LSU fixes this? Well, it's quite simple, right? Alabama, I read this stat earlier. I couldn't believe it, right? Alabama on third and long situations is one of the worst teams in the country at converting first downs. Take that like LSU, who third and seven is better, one of the best teams in the country at third and sevens are better. They're almost the exact opposites, right? You get Alabama in third and seven or more, and they're converting at a very low rate. Like they're not, if they get behind the sticks, they're not converting first downs. Hence, you get them in third and three or less, they're the best, one of the best in the country. And it's like LSU is the exact opposite. You get them in third and seven. I mean, as an LSU fan, you get LSU in third and seven feeling way more confident than third and one because I've seen this team too many times not be able to run the football for 1 yard to believe that it's just going to magically happen. So the key to this football game is keeping Jalen Milroe in that pocket, right? We want Jalen Milroe throwing the football as many times as he can because him throwing the football means that they're chasing points. It means that they're getting outside of what he is good at. And I'm telling you now, I'm not trying to disrespect Jalen Milroe because Jalen Milroe, if Alabama wins this football game, it's going to be because of him. Because he's such a phenomenal football player with his legs, and then you add in what he can do with his arm. But it all starts with what he can do with his legs, and can Alabama establish the run game? Because if they can establish the run game, it opens up pockets to make throwing the ball easier, right? You have guys like Zy Alexander who are playing extremely well in that back end, but I'm telling you guys, that secondary cannot match up with a guy like Ryan Williams, right? Are we going to see that matchup exploited? Or has LSU kind of figured things out? Do they have an extremely good game plan? This is where I'm going to put my faith in Blake Baker and the staff. Because they've shown when they have time to prepare, they can prepare for anybody. And that the defense is good enough that they can execute that plan. But it leads to concern because, like I said, this is the best version of that team that you're going to see. A team coming off a bye week, just won their game 34-0, ran the ball all over Missouri, all right, and it's just a component of the game that LSU hasn't handled well, and that's the quarterback being able to run. And like I said, the Arkansas game is the only example of them having success against that. And I'm telling you now, Taylor Green and Jalen Milroe aren't the same guy. Like, Jalen Milroe has 12 touchdowns running. So, like, he is a threat. And that is what I saw when I looked up these stats. I saw Alabama is extremely good in the red zone, right? This team has only kicked four made field goals all season. 4. You know what that means? That means they're getting touchdowns, right? And you know why they're getting touchdowns when they get inside the red zone? Because they have a guy like Jalen Milroe who makes it a lot easier when you have to account for the quarterback. And why LSU kind of struggles in those situations is because they don't have that. They don't have to account for that. And this Alabama football team is super talented, and they're super good, and they turn the football over, and they do things that not a lot of elite teams can do with the personnel they have. It's just a fact. So let's talk about what this game looks like from LSU's standpoint. We kind of broke it down from the Alabama side and what you could expect from them. The LSU side, this game, to me, it starts and ends with Garrett Nussmeier. Alabama's defense is not great. They're not great at stopping the pass. They're not great at stopping the run. LSU can't freaking run the ball. All right? Will they try it? Yes, they're going to try it. Hopefully they have some success because I don't see them having a path to victory like the A&M game if they run for 20 whatever yards. All right? It just can't happen. Like, you can't ask Nussmeier to go out back there and drop it back 50 times and expect him not to mess things up at least a couple times. And that's where it starts with Garrett Nussmeier. If you have a performance like you had against A&M, obviously you're not going to win this football game. But it's all about when those come as well. Because if LSU is in control of the game and can run the ball and Nussmeier can kind of just pick and choose his spots, that's the game that LSU has to play. That's the game that wins you this football game and wins this football game decisively, because I believe these teams are evenly matched. I believe you put these two teams on paper and they play 10 times, it'll be 6-4 or 5-5. It could be very easily be split right down the middle, because I think these teams are so similar. Like Alabama has tons of flaws, LSU has tons of flaws, but when you see them at their peak, like you saw in the first half against Georgia, like you saw against Arkansas, or even the first half against A&M, you saw those versions of those teams that look tremendous. And you're like, why can't they do this all the time? Well, that's what we talk about a lot. It's the difference between an elite football team and a very good football team, is that consistency. And both these teams struggle to find it. Now, obviously, LSU has Death Valley on their side. It's Saturday night. There's a hurricane coming. It's going to be crazy. It's the biggest game of the season at home. It's going to be everything. Like, everything is on the line. Like, the atmosphere is going to be absolutely unreal in Tiger Stadium, rain or shine. Like, it's not going to matter. You're going to have that as part of your team on Saturday night. And how does Alabama handle that? They're one of the most penalized teams in the SEC. So a path to victory for LSU, to me, is being able to establish a running game. Yes, I said it. Oh, shocker. LSU has to be able to run the football. I'm not saying you have to go out there and run it for 250, but you have to be able to go run it for 100. All right, or maybe even 150, because there's going to come a time where you're going to have to convert third downs and you're going to have to make plays running the football, because Garrett Nussmeier can't do what he's been doing. It's just impossible to not mess up when you have that many opportunities. And when you're dropping back 50 times a game, the way the offense is designed, they're not dinking and dunking, guys. They're throwing the ball down the field. Like, they're getting chunk plays, but the problem is when you make a mistake that like that in those situations, it kills all momentum. And then this crowd is going to be hungry and they're going to be after Nussmeier. If he has an early interception, they're going to be on him, man. And how does that affect the game towards the end? I have confidence in Garrett Nussmeier. I know Garrett Nussmeier has all the confidence in the world, but it's when things start going wrong after you've felt a little bit of pressure, right? Because people can excuse one bad performance, right? But it's like, if they start to get the feeling that's happening again, how does that make you feel then? And how do you play then when the odds are getting kind of stacked against you, and maybe even your own fan base starts kind of grumbling in the background? Guys hear that, right? And there's been a lot of questions towards Garrett Nussmeier. So how does he perform? How does this run game perform? And how does this offensive line not be able to run block? To this day, I don't understand it. It's never going to be a thing where LSU doesn't have the players to run the football. It's just, hopefully over this bye week they took the time and they figured out ways to make it execute better, because it's an all effort thing. It's the tight ends, it's the O-line, it's the running back, it's the quarterback, it's the receivers, it's everybody. Everybody's involved in the run game. And it's got to be everybody's bought in. And right now, clearly everybody is not bought in, because the performance is lackluster, to say the least. You have your best rushing performance of the season against Arkansas, and then you come out and you run for 30 yards. And it made no sense. It was the most mind-boggling thing in the world. So, that being said, my prediction for this football game, I think the rumors of Jalen Monroe not being healthy, I think LSU and Blake Baker and company come up with a good plan for him, keeping him in the pocket and not letting that run game get loose, kind of like it did last year's game. I think LSU can cause negative plays, which is hard for Alabama to recover from. And I think when it comes to the kicking game, I think, believe it or not, LSU has the advantage. I think LSU pulls out a win, man. And I think they win pretty well. All right, I think this is a higher scoring game than most people think. I think Alabama comes out ready. I think LSU comes out ready. And I just think it's a slugfest, and it's going to come down to whoever makes that one mistake, right? And right now, LSU leads in that category. Like, they're prone to make the mistake. But I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Tiger Stadium's going to be crazy. I think LSU is going to be able to run the ball a little bit on Alabama to take some of that pressure off of Garrett Nussmeier. And I got LSU winning this football game 38-34. They are going to go in and they are going to control their own destiny. They're going to win. I'm speaking into the existence now. LSU's winning 38-34. Clip it. Do whatever you got to do. It's happening on Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. We're going to be right back here next week talking about what the rest of the season means, because LSU's playoff hopes will be still alive, hopefully. And if you guys like this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. It does absolutely nothing for me. It just helps you guys, see the content, and it's free. Like, it costs you literally nothing. So just click the subscribe button real quick after this video is done. Like the video, drop your comment, let me know what you think the final score of this game is going to be. Do you have LSU winning? How are you feeling? I don't know. I'm nervous. I'm just rambling at this point. I will see you guys next time.